Beneath the haunting, icy waves of Truk Lagoon lies a submerged testament to destruction and lost pride, a silent witness to one of the most devastating naval battles in history. The seabed there whispers stories of chaos and ruin, revealing a sprawling graveyard of ships that once symbolized formidable maritime power. This is the resting place of a fleet that dared to challenge the overwhelming dominance of American naval forces in the Pacific. A fleet that met its catastrophic end on a day etched into the annals of history, February 17, 1944. That day would forever mark the fate of more than 60 Japanese vessels, sealing their destinies in a fierce and relentless confrontation. Operation Hailstone was launched with the singular purpose of annihilating Japan's naval strength once and for all, aiming to cripple their capacity to project power across the vast Pacific Ocean. As the engines of countless aircraft roared to life and their propellers spun tirelessly, the sky above Truk Lagoon darkened with the shadow of American warplanes. These aerial giants soared in coordinated fury, their presence evoking chilling memories of the infamous attack on Pearl Harbor that had occurred 3 years earlier, on December 7, 1941. Yet, this time, the balance of power had shifted dramatically. The tables had turned, and the United States was now on the offensive. A formidable fleet of dozens of American aircraft, launched from carriers lurking just beyond the horizon, descended in a calculated assault designed to catch the Japanese forces completely off guard. The air was soon filled with a cacophony of explosions and the relentless thunder of gunfire, as bombs rained down like deadly rain upon the helpless vessels below. The horizon was ablaze with fiery explosions, as metal hulls and superstructures were torn apart by the relentless assault. From above, a firestorm erupted, engulfing ship after ship in an inferno of destruction. Japanese defenses, overwhelmed and outmatched by the relentless aerial onslaught, struggled to respond, some ships attempting to resist defiantly, while others scrambled desperately to retreat in the face of overwhelming firepower. Amid this chaos, the Japanese fleet was pushed to its limits, fighting to the bitter end. Many vessels attempted to break away, seeking refuge in retreat, while others fought valiantly to hold their ground. But for the United States Navy's commander, Admiral Raymond Spruance, surrender was never an option. With the mighty battleships Iowa and New Jersey under his command, he was determined to hunt down every last Japanese vessel still afloat. His mission was clear: to seek out and destroy the remnants of the Japanese fleet in a decisive naval confrontation, leaving no ship unscathed, no enemy vessel unchased. For Admiral Spruance, this was America's chance to exact vengeance for past humiliations, to demonstrate the overwhelming might of their naval forces, and he was prepared to pursue this goal at any cost, regardless of the toll it might take. As tensions between Japan and the United States escalated in the years leading up to World War II, the Japanese Imperial Navy recognized the strategic importance of the secluded waters of Truk Lagoon, situated approximately 1,000 miles northeast of New Guinea in the South Pacific. The lagoon's remote location offered a natural sanctuary, a hidden anchorage where ships could potentially evade enemy detection and regroup. The Japanese military saw in this tranquil yet strategically significant basin an opportunity, an ideal hiding spot that could be exploited to bolster their naval operations, provide safe harbor for their vessels, and serve as a staging ground for future offensive maneuvers. This covert potential did not go unnoticed, and the Japanese Navy began to consider the lagoon as a vital component of their broader Pacific strategy, aiming to utilize its seclusion to their advantage amid the tumult of impending global conflict. Approximately 3,300 miles southwest of Hawaii, Japan envisioned this remote island as a formidable stronghold, an impregnable bastion that would serve as a vital outpost in their strategic military plans. It was conceived as an unsinkable aircraft carrier, a floating fortress from which they could exert their power across the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, reaching out to the myriad islands that dotted the region. With this vision in mind, the Japanese undertook extensive fortification efforts on the island, transforming it into a well-defended military hub. They fortified the surrounding lagoon area by constructing extensive airstrips, seaplane bases, and a network of coastal artillery positions designed to defend against potential threats from the sea and air. The lagoon itself, protected naturally by its sheltered waters, offered an ideal harbor capable of hosting a large fleet of ships, making it an ideal anchorage for naval operations. Encircling the lagoon, the outer ring of islands was fortified to create a formidable defensive perimeter, effectively transforming the entire region into a strategic stronghold. By the late 1930s, a significant portion of the Japanese fleet had already been anchored in this location, with a force estimated at around 40,000 men, ready at a moment's notice. Following their conquest of China, Japan further developed this military infrastructure, turning it into the operational base for the Imperial Navy's Fourth Fleet, which was also known as the South Seas Force. The landscape and strategic importance of the island continued to evolve dramatically after Japan's successful capture of the Philippines, integrating the Fourth Fleet seamlessly into the larger framework of the Imperial Navy's combined fleet. As the region grew in importance, it became a critical hub of aerial strength, with up to 5 state-of-the-art airfields constructed to prepare a large number of aircraft for upcoming battles. Between the years of 1941 and 1942, the island's significance increased even further. The Imperial Navy strategically positioned its aircraft carriers and battleships in this area, utilizing the lagoon as a launch pad for offensive operations against the United States and its allies. Its prime location allowed the Japanese fleet to respond rapidly to threats, launching swift and decisive strikes across the Pacific theater, thus establishing this island as a pivotal point in their military strategy during the war. Throughout the vast and treacherous theater of World War II's Pacific Campaign, the Allied forces meticulously orchestrated a series of operations spanning from the dense jungles of New Guinea to the strategically vital islands of the Solomon and Gilbert archipelagos. These endeavors culminated in fierce battles across these scattered territories, with Wake Island serving as a critical outpost and even the distant Mariana Islands becoming a focal point of strategic importance. At the heart of Japan's military command, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, remarkable for his strategic foresight, chose this very location to establish his headquarters aboard the most formidable battleship ever constructed, the colossal Yamato. This imposing vessel symbolized Japan's maritime might during the early years of the conflict, embodying the nation's resolve to defend its empire at all costs. As the United States intensified its island-hopping campaign across the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, the strategic necessity of neutralizing the vital atoll of Truk Lagoon became increasingly apparent. This lagoon, heavily fortified and serving as a crucial logistical hub for the Japanese fleet, was integral to Japan's defensive perimeter. Its capture was viewed as essential for dismantling the outermost defensive ring of the Japanese Empire, thereby bringing the relentless conflict closer to the heartland of Japan itself. Within the broader strategic framework, Truk Lagoon was not merely a military installation, but a linchpin in Japan's defensive architecture. Often referred to by Allied forces, both American and British, as the Gibraltar of the Pacific, due to its seemingly impregnable defenses. For years following the devastating attack on Pearl Harbor, the United States found itself hamstrung by limited military capacity and resources, unable to deliver a decisive blow that could shatter this formidable fortress. Japan's defenses, deeply entrenched and reinforced, appeared almost unassailable, and the early phase of the Pacific War was marked by a mounting sense of frustration and cautious optimism. Nonetheless, the tide of war gradually turned as the Allies adopted a strategy of relentless incremental assaults, one island after another, each victory chipping away at Japan's formidable defensive perimeter. By late 1943, after nearly 2 years of relentless combat, the resilience of Truk Lagoon as a primary Japanese stronghold began to falter under mounting pressure. This decline was driven by multiple factors: the increasing intensity of military operations, the depletion of Japan's dwindling resources, and the relentless advance of Allied forces across the Pacific theater. As the Allied forces pushed forward, their supply lines, once secure and vital for maintaining Japanese defenses, began to unravel. These logistical arteries, crucial for sustaining the island garrisons and fueling ongoing operations, started snapping under the strain of a multi-front war that stretched Japan's military and economic resources perilously thin. One of the most significant blows to Japan's Pacific strategy was the loss of control over the Solomon Islands, a strategic archipelago that, once captured, severed a critical link in Japan's supply and communication network. This severance not only isolated remaining Japanese garrisons, but also hindered the flow of reinforcements and supplies, critically undermining the Japanese ability to maintain their defensive perimeter. Each successive defeat further exposed the vulnerabilities of the Japanese Empire's once impregnable fortress, gradually transforming the Pacific theater into a battlefield of attrition, where the Allies' superior logistics, innovative tactics, and relentless determination steadily eroded Japan's capacity to sustain its extensive defensive network. The campaign's progression marked a turning point in the war, one where the once unbreakable defenses of the Japanese Empire began to crumble, inch by inch, as the Allied momentum gained unstoppable force. The strategic importance of the supply routes and reinforcement lines to the critical Truk Lagoon cannot be overstated. It served as a vital nexus in the relentless island-hopping campaign conducted by the United States, which was meticulously designed to systematically isolate and dismantle Japanese strongholds across the Pacific theater. The overarching goal was to cut off these fortified positions from the vital lifelines of support, supplies, reinforcements, and logistical resources that were essential not only for their sustained existence, but also for their operational effectiveness. As the campaign progressed, the Allies' efforts became increasingly comprehensive and effective. One of the key elements contributing to this success was the intensified submarine warfare waged beneath the waves. The silent hunters of the ocean, submarines, embarked on a relentless campaign of disruption, effectively turning the waters surrounding Truk Lagoon into a deadly maze for Japanese supply ships. These submarines, operating stealthily and with deadly precision, began to pick off vessels one by one, strangling the vital flow of essential goods, ammunition, and reinforcements that were destined to sustain the Japanese garrisons in the region. This underwater attrition significantly hindered Japan's ability to maintain its distant outposts, gradually eroding their capacity to resist the advancing Allied forces. The war of attrition was exacting a heavy toll on Japanese resources and logistics. The continuous loss of ships and supplies created a vicious cycle, draining the already limited reserves necessary to uphold resupply efforts and defend remote positions such as Truk Lagoon. As supplies dwindled and the pressure mounted, the Japanese military faced mounting difficulties in maintaining their distant outposts, which became increasingly vulnerable to the combined pressures of naval blockade and aerial bombardment. Simultaneously, the broader scope of the conflict was manifesting in the skies above Truk Lagoon. Aerial reconnaissance missions and sporadic bombing raids conducted by the Allies not only inflicted material damage, but also cast a looming shadow of uncertainty and impending doom over the island. The once seemingly safe skies became a perilous zone, with constant threats from enemy aircraft that disrupted daily life and military operations alike. The persistent aerial pressure painted a grim portrait of the future, signaling that the Japanese hold on the territory was becoming increasingly tenuous. In response to the mounting threats, Japan endeavored to fortify its territorial defenses, despite the growing challenges to sustainability. Recognizing the importance of the island, Japanese forces sought to cling to their positions at all costs. To this end, they bolstered their anti-aircraft defenses and coastal batteries, reinforcing them with additional ground troops. These reinforcements were primarily brought in by the Imperial Army's 52nd Division, which between November 1943 and January 1944 undertook the task of strengthening the island's defenses. This period saw a concerted effort to build and upgrade military installations, aiming to create a resilient barrier against the relentless Allied assaults and to prolong Japanese control over the strategic island of Truk Lagoon. Further efforts were undertaken to bolster the defenses of the strategic facilities nestled within the island complex. These fortifications included the installation of machine gun emplacements, specifically designed to cover key approaches and vulnerable points, as well as an extensive array of other artillery systems to create a formidable protective barrier. The defensive measures also encompassed bomb-resistant tunnels and air raid shelters, meticulously constructed to safeguard personnel and critical infrastructure from enemy attack. Among the most vital assets protected were the enormous fuel storage facilities, which held an astonishing total of 880,000 tons of fuel, an amount crucial to sustaining operations across the Pacific theater. This enormous fuel reserve was divided between a subterranean tank capable of holding 10,000 tons and two massive surface steel tanks, each with a capacity of 35,000 tons. The underground tank was carefully buried beneath layers of protective barriers, while the surface tanks were constructed from durable steel, standing as towering symbols of strategic fuel reserves. The entire complex was a hub of activity and strategic importance, featuring a wide array of supporting infrastructure. It boasted a 3,345-foot-long bomber airstrip designed to accommodate long-range aircraft and facilitate rapid deployment. Nearby, a submarine base was established, serving as a critical point for submarine operations and maintenance. A floating dry dock, capable of handling vessels weighing up to 2,500 tons, was stationed nearby to enable repairs and maintenance at sea, ensuring the readiness of fleet units. Additionally, an aviation repair station was set up to support aircraft repairs and logistical support, while several radar installations provided early warning and airspace surveillance. The defenses extended further with a dedicated torpedo boat base, vital for patrol and quick-strike missions. The entire airfield complex was complemented by the 5 airstrips previously constructed, forming an integrated defensive and operational network. To reinforce the island's defenses, dozens of anti-aircraft guns and dual-purpose artillery guns were strategically deployed across the facility. These weapon systems, including machine gun positions and other artillery, formed a layered defense designed to counter enemy aircraft and surface threats effectively. The upgrades to these defenses were scheduled to be completed by February of the year 1944. Yet, despite their impressive appearance, these enhancements served primarily as a facade, a mask concealing the declining operational viability of the islands. The reality was that the strategic value of the island complex was diminishing, and the defenses, although formidable, were a sign of a waning capability rather than unassailable strength. From the perspective of United States military planners, who meticulously analyzed the shifting patterns of Pacific warfare, this decline signaled a critical vulnerability, an opening in the otherwise robust defenses of the atoll. This vulnerability created a window of opportunity, a subtle crack in the armor through which an attack could potentially be launched. The decision to target the lagoon, referred to as Truk Lagoon, was not taken lightly. It was neither impulsive nor hasty. Rather, it was the culmination of careful deliberation and strategic assessment. American military leadership understood the significance of Truk Lagoon, recognizing its vital role within the broader Pacific campaign. However, they were also acutely aware of the dangers inherent in such an attack, the so-called hornet's nest, a heavily fortified area with complex defenses that could easily turn into a lethal trap for any invading force. Accurate intelligence was therefore of paramount importance. The United States needed to gather clear, precise information about the defenses they would face at Truk Lagoon, which was shrouded in secrecy and heavily fortified to deter potential assaults. Consequently, reconnaissance missions and intelligence operations became crucial components of the planning process. These efforts aimed to develop a detailed understanding of the enemy's defensive layout, uncover weaknesses, and assess the overall risks involved in the operation. Only with such comprehensive intelligence could the United States military craft a meticulously coordinated plan capable of overcoming the formidable defenses and achieving their strategic objectives in the Pacific theater. A carefully coordinated and meticulously planned assault was essential to achieve the desired military objectives while simultaneously minimizing casualties among the attacking forces. Such precision was vital to ensure the success of the operation, especially considering the formidable defenses that the Japanese had established at Truk Lagoon. The strategic importance of allowing the lagoon to remain a heavily fortified Japanese base was immense. Its presence posed a significant obstacle to the United States' broader campaign of island hopping across the Pacific. This campaign aimed to systematically neutralize Japanese strongholds, gradually moving closer to the Japanese mainland and crippling their ability to resist effectively. The lagoon itself served as a critical hub for Japanese naval and air power, acting as a formidable stronghold that threatened to disrupt Allied supply lines and stall the momentum vital for advancing towards Japan. It was essentially a sword pointed directly at the core of the Allied advance, an obstacle that needed to be removed to ensure the uninterrupted flow of troops, equipment, and supplies. The strategic significance of Truk Lagoon was thus undeniable. Its existence not only impeded Allied military operations, but also jeopardized the overall success of their broader campaign in the Pacific theater. The overarching strategic plan for what would become known as Operation Hailstone was carefully devised under the leadership of Admiral Chester W. Nimitz, who served as the Commander-in-Chief of the Pacific Fleet. While Nimitz provided overall strategic guidance, the detailed operational execution was entrusted to Vice Admiral Mark A. Mitcher, who commanded Task Force 58. This division of command allowed for a focused approach, combining strategic oversight with tactical precision. The planning process for the operation was a collaborative effort, drawing upon the expertise and experience of a dedicated team of officers and staff from both the United States Navy and the Army Air Forces. Each group contributed their unique insights and skills to devise an effective plan aimed at neutralizing the formidable defenses of Truk Lagoon. Critical to the success of this operation was the role played by codebreakers, whose ability to decipher Japanese communications provided invaluable intelligence. Their efforts offered detailed insights into the enemy's dispositions, movements, and intentions, significantly enhancing the accuracy and effectiveness of the planned assault. The initial concept of action was a carefully choreographed two-day assault designed to deliver a decisive blow to the Japanese forces stationed at Truk Lagoon. The plan was to coordinate naval, aerial, and ground operations in such a way that they would complement each other, maximizing damage and rendering the Japanese defenses ineffective. The ultimate goal was to shatter the Japanese naval and air assets arrayed in the lagoon, thereby crippling their capacity to resist and cutting off this critical node in their defensive network. This assault was designed not only to destroy the immediate threats, but also to serve as a decisive step in the broader campaign to weaken Japanese holdouts across the Pacific, ultimately paving the way for future advances toward the Japanese mainland. The strategic approach envisioned for operations across the Pacific was intricately designed to involve multiple coordinated efforts, each aimed at crippling Japanese defenses and infrastructure. At the forefront of this plan, carrier-based aircraft would serve as the spearhead of the attack, launching relentless waves of airstrikes aimed at several critical targets. These air assaults were meticulously planned to neutralize Japanese airfields, destroy fighter planes and bombers stationed there, and sink enemy ships anchored within strategic lagoons. Simultaneously, surface ships and submarines formed an essential part of the broader strategy, tasked with surrounding and trapping Japanese vessels, effectively creating a maritime blockade that would restrict their movement and supply lines. This blockade was intended not just to contain the Japanese fleet, but also to set the stage for a decisive victory through a relentless barrage of artillery fire and torpedoes. If any ships attempted to flee this encirclement, They would be met with a coordinated and overwhelming attack designed to sink them before they could escape. The entire operation was crafted to be a comprehensive assault, capable of overwhelming Japanese defenses, sowing chaos and dismantling the military infrastructure that sustained their stronghold in the region. Despite the meticulous planning and anticipation of the attack, the Japanese were not entirely caught off guard. When two Marine Corps B-24 Liberator bombers soared through the skies above Truk Lagoon, the Japanese quickly realized that an imminent enemy assault was underway. However, what the Japanese High Command failed to fully anticipate was the sheer ferocity and scale of the upcoming American offensive. The United States was orchestrating a complex and ambitious series of operations across multiple strategic locations, including the Marshall Islands, New Guinea, and the Solomon Islands. This multi-pronged campaign was designed to strike a decisive blow against Japanese holdings across the Pacific, catching the enemy off balance and reducing their ability to respond effectively. In their efforts to counter the imminent marine assault, the Japanese Navy dispersed its forces across several islands, attempting to spread out their ships and troops to better defend each position. While this dispersal might have initially appeared to be a strategic move, intended to make the Japanese forces more resilient and flexible, it inadvertently weakened their overall combat strength. The division of their naval forces meant that they could no longer concentrate their firepower effectively, leading to a significant dilution of their fighting capacity. Moreover, this strategy resulted in a needless waste of resources and a loss of strategic advantage, as the dispersed Japanese units found themselves increasingly vulnerable and less capable of mounting a unified defense against the advancing American forces. Unbeknownst to the Japanese, however, another formidable threat was lurking beneath the ocean's surface, an unseen and deadly force. The United States Navy, with its formidable fleet of submarines, was silently moving into position, prepared to strike at Japanese ships with precision and devastating effect. These submarines would become a critical element of the broader campaign, capable of slipping past enemy defenses and launching surprise attacks on Japanese supply lines and fleet units. Their presence added a new dimension of danger to the Japanese naval strategy, further complicating their efforts to defend and maintain control over their Pacific holdings. The combination of aerial, surface, and underwater threats created a multi-layered challenge for the Japanese, one that ultimately contributed to the unraveling of their Pacific defenses and the eventual shift in control of the region towards Allied forces. Silent and deadly, the submarines prowled stealthily through the waters surrounding Truk Lagoon, their presence almost imperceptible to anyone on the surface. These underwater predators moved with calculated precision, patiently waiting for the opportune moment to strike, focusing their efforts on Japanese supply carriers that were vulnerable and unprepared for attack. Their mission was clear: to cripple the logistical backbone of the Japanese fleet and halt the flow of vital supplies to their forces. As the threat of imminent destruction loomed, the Japanese commanders on the scene recognized the gravity of the situation and the devastating consequences that awaited them. In response, Admiral Minichi Koga, commanding the Japanese Imperial Navy's combined fleet, faced a critical decision. With the weight of command on his shoulders, he ordered an immediate evacuation of the island, prioritizing the safety of his remaining forces and attempting to salvage as many supplies as possible before the enemy's relentless assault could obliterate their remaining assets. This order was a decisive move, signaling a retreat that marked the end of an era for Japanese operations in the region. The garrison stationed at Truk was left to confront the full fury of American forces, which now encroached upon the island with overwhelming strength and determination. Meanwhile, in the skies above, the United States military had quickly gathered intelligence from their two formidable Liberator bomber task forces, numbered 50 and 58. These units departed swiftly for Truk, commanded respectively by Vice Admiral Raymond A. Spruance and Rear Admiral Mitcher. According to historical records of the United States Navy, the American naval force assembled for this operation comprised a formidable fleet of ships and aircraft. It included 4 brand-new Essex-class aircraft carriers, the Yorktown, Essex, Intrepid, and Bunker Hill, each brimming with aircraft ready to unleash destruction. Supporting these carriers were the formidable Enterprise and four light carriers, Bellawood, Cabin, Monterey, and Cowpens. This formidable carrier strike group was further reinforced by a complement of over 500 aircraft, including fighters, bombers, and attack planes, all prepared for the approaching assault. The fleet was also composed of 6 modern fast battleships, 10 cruisers, and a total of 28 destroyers, forming a well-rounded and powerful force capable of overwhelming the Japanese defenses. Meanwhile, the remnants of the Japanese defensive forces on Truk were minimal. After Koga's retreat, only 8 destroyers, 2 light cruisers, and a handful of auxiliary vessels remained to defend the island. These ships, though numerous, were no match against the overwhelming force approaching them, and the storm of destruction that was about to be unleashed. At dawn on February 17th, in the year of 1944, the tranquil waters of Truk Lagoon were suddenly transformed into a raging battlefield. The calm was shattered by the fury of Operation Hailstone, a meticulously orchestrated assault designed to annihilate the Japanese fleet and its logistical base. The first act of this fierce attack was marked by a deafening roar, as engines revved and planes launched into the sky from the decks of the American aircraft carrier Essex. These aircraft, loaded with 51,000 armor-piercing bombs, ascended in waves, ready to deliver their deadly payloads. Prior to this main attack, an earlier sweep had been conducted by 11 Hellcats, fighter aircraft tasked with clearing the skies and reducing Japanese air defenses, an operation that had taken place about 30 minutes earlier. This preliminary strike served to make the subsequent bombing runs more effective and to weaken the Japanese defenses in anticipation of the main assault. By 7 o'clock in the morning, the skies above Truk had become a battlefield, and the waters below churned with the chaos of war, as American aircraft and ships converged in a coordinated effort to deliver a crushing blow to the Japanese forces stationed there. The results of this operation would be felt for years to come, marking a turning point in the Pacific theater of World War II. A single bomb, equipped with a delayed fuse, was carefully dropped onto the Japanese ship Nippo Maru. The explosion was instantaneous, causing the vessel to sink immediately beneath the waves. This event marked the ominous beginning of a series of devastating attacks that would soon follow, transforming the peaceful skies into a battleground teeming with chaos. Above, the heavens were densely packed with fighters, bombers, and torpedo planes, each squadron executing their missions with precise timing and unwavering coordination, all aimed at specific targets. These aerial assaults descended upon the lagoon with a ferocity that seemed capable of shattering the calmness of the morning, turning the tranquil scene into a scene of utter destruction within moments. For a span of 2 weeks, the Japanese forces had maintained a vigilant watch, aware of the looming threat. Yet when the decisive moment finally arrived, they found themselves woefully unprepared. Their radar systems, primarily calibrated for detecting high-altitude aircraft, failed to pick up the low-flying American planes, leaving them vulnerable. To make matters worse, some of their most skilled pilots were absent, enjoying a brief leave, which further weakened their defensive readiness. The attack unfolded as a meticulously choreographed ballet of destruction, where the coordination between various elements of the attacking force, aircraft squadrons, surface ships, and submarines, demonstrated a remarkable level of precision and timing. Planes launched from the decks of the Essex-class aircraft carriers, including the Bunker Hill, Yorktown, Essex, and Intrepid, joined forces with squadrons from the light carriers of the Independence class, such as the Cowpens, Bow, Wood, Monterey, and Cabot. These naval units swarmed the skies over the island of Tulagi, catching the Japanese completely off guard. The success of this surprise attack was rooted in thorough planning and flawless execution, which paid off in striking the enemy unexpectedly. The initial waves of aerial strikes focused primarily on the Japanese airfields, aiming to neutralize their ability to retaliate from the air. By targeting their aircraft and runways early on, the attacking forces sought to prevent the Japanese from launching any meaningful counterattacks. As bombs rained down and detonations shook the ground, approximately 45 Japanese fighters managed to take to the skies in a desperate attempt to defend their territory. These fighters were soon joined by an additional 45, making a total of about 90 Japanese aircraft actively engaged in the air against the relentless American assault. Despite the fierce resistance put up by the Japanese fighters, the American air offensive remained relentless and unyielding. The combination of meticulous planning, coordinated strikes, and overwhelming force ensured that the Japanese air defenses were gradually overwhelmed, setting the stage for the subsequent phases of the battle and ultimately shifting the balance of power in this critical confrontation. Despite their efforts to mount a cohesive and effective defense, the Japanese forces found themselves overwhelmed during the fierce attack. The outcome was catastrophic. Approximately 30 Japanese aircraft were obliterated mid-air in a swift, merciless strike, and an additional 40 were left incapacitated on the ground due to the relentless strafing runs that left chaos and destruction in their wake. In stark contrast to the aerial battle, the island itself bore the brunt of the American assault, experiencing the full fury of the attack from the skies above as the formidable American Avengers unleashed a relentless barrage. These aircraft rained down fragmentation bombs and incendiaries, turning the landscape into a scene of widespread devastation and havoc that wreaked havoc on Japanese troops and installations below. Meanwhile, the surrounding waters around the island met a similar fate, as United States submarines actively engaged their targets. These submarines, stealthily lurking beneath the surface, targeted and successfully decimated several merchant vessels that had been anchored nearby. Their coordinated strikes contributed to the chaos and disruption faced by the Japanese, further diminishing their ability to mount any effective response. In reaction to the initial barrage of attack, the Japanese forces scrambled desperately to retaliate and regain some measure of control over the situation. Anti-aircraft guns, positioned on ships and installations, barked desperately into the sky, trying to bring down the attacking aircraft that seemed to reign supreme during the assault. Ships anchored in the lagoon attempted to maneuver their guns into position, firing in a haphazard attempt to join the fray and defend themselves. Yet, despite their efforts, the element of surprise had significantly tilted the scales in favor of the attacking forces. The rapidity and ferocity of the assault sowed confusion among the defenders, disrupting their rhythm of response and leaving them disoriented amid the chaos. This moment of intense combat would be forever etched into military history, symbolizing the ferocity and unpredictability of warfare. Amid this chaos, Lieutenant James E. Bridges exemplified extraordinary bravery, perhaps bordering on recklessness, as he faced the overwhelming assault. With unwavering determination and precise focus, he identified his target, the Japanese transport vessel, the Ikoku Maru, which was heavily laden with ammunition and supplies. In a calculated and daring move, Bridges zeroed in on his target, aiming carefully and delivering a torpedo with deadly accuracy. Moments later, the Ikoku Maru was struck, igniting in a colossal explosion that lit up the battlefield and signaled a significant blow to the Japanese logistical efforts. The explosion was so massive that it caused a shock wave powerful enough to be felt across the water, and tragically, it also ensnared Lieutenant Bridges and his two dedicated crew members in its destructive path, a heartbreaking reminder of the high stakes and personal sacrifices inherent in warfare. The brave crewmen of Torpedo Squadron, VT-6, who were attached to the aircraft carrier USS Intrepid, faced a tragic fate that would forever be etched into the annals of history. Their aircraft, caught in a devastating explosion, was torn apart in a burst of fiery destruction, causing it to plummet from the sky in a tragic descent. With this catastrophic fall, the lives of these valiant warriors were cut short, their sacrifice a stark reminder of the brutal realities of war. Amidst the chaos, the radio operators aboard the ships and aircraft frantically transmitted urgent calls, their voices crackling through the static as they sought to coordinate defenses and relay critical information. The airwaves were filled with the tense scramble of commands, warnings, and desperate pleas, all underscoring the grim scope of the attack unfolding before their eyes. The assault, known as Operation Hailstone, was characterized by its relentless and overwhelming nature. It was a meticulously coordinated barrage of strikes, each wave rolling across the lagoon like an unstoppable hammer, designed to systematically dismantle the Japanese defenses and infrastructure. Every attack was precise and forceful, each one hammering away at the enemy's positions with relentless efficiency. The culmination of this effort was the destruction of what was once a thriving hub of military activity, what had been a well-fortified and busy lagoon, by the early hours of the morning. As dawn broke over the scene, the once proud facilities that had supported Japanese military operations were reduced to nothing more than smoldering ruins, a testament to the destructive power of the Allied assault. At the height of the attack, the Japanese air defenses were severely diminished. Out of the original fleet of approximately 370 Zero fighters, which had been stationed at 5 different airfields, fewer than 100 remained intact and operational by dawn. This dramatic reduction in aircraft strength represented a significant blow to Japanese air capacity in the region, leaving their defenses stretched thin and vulnerable. As the first light of day cast its pale glow over the battlefield, the surviving Japanese warships, damaged and battered, scrambled to make desperate preparations for a daring and risky escape. They hoped that their remaining aircraft, though scarce, would provide enough cover for their retreat, allowing them to evade the relentless onslaught and regroup elsewhere. By 5 o'clock in the morning, the situation was set for a final phase of the operation. The remaining Japanese ships and aircraft braced themselves for what was to come, knowing that their chances of survival depended on a combination of daring tactics and sheer luck. The scene was one of chaos and resolve, as the defenders on both sides prepared for the inevitable clash that would determine the fate of the island and its surrounding waters. This early morning period marked the culmination of a fierce and decisive campaign, one that would leave an indelible mark on the history of the Pacific theater. During a fierce and intense aerial campaign, the skies above the battlefield became darkened by the relentless onslaught of American air power. Over 30 strategic airstrikes were launched in rapid succession, unleashing a relentless downpour of bombs weighing 501,000 pounds each. These bombs rained down amidst the swirling chaos of combat, turning the sky into a tumultuous battleground filled with noise, smoke, and fire. Amidst this chaos, Lieutenant Commander James D. Ramage emerged as a true symbol of daring and courage. He led a daring bombing run from the USS Enterprise, displaying remarkable skill and fearless resolve. His actions were so exceptional that he was personally credited with delivering the decisive blow that ultimately sank the formidable Japanese tanker Hoyo Maru, dealing a significant blow to enemy logistics and supply lines. However, the Hoyo Maru was not the only vessel to fall victim to the relentless American assault. The Japanese destroyer Fuyuzuki found itself caught in the crosshairs of a dive bomber attack. Although the bomber's payload did not strike with a direct hit, the near miss created a shockwave so powerful that it caused severe structural damage to the destroyer. The force of the explosion ruptured Fuyuzuki's bulkheads, leading to uncontrollable flooding that rapidly compromised the ship's stability. Despite the valiant efforts of the damage control teams aboard the destroyer, their efforts were ultimately in vain. They could not stem the relentless tide of water rushing into the vessel. Overwhelmed by the extent of the damage, the Fuyuzuki was forced to succumb to the overwhelming forces of nature and warfare, sinking into the depths of the ocean by the following day. The news of this defeat reached Admiral Sprue with fury and frustration. He was enraged upon learning that a group of Japanese warships was attempting to flee through North Pass in a desperate bid for safety. His desire for direct engagement with the enemy was so intense that he ordered a halt to any ongoing attacks on the vessel Katori and her accompanying fleet. Instead, he took tactical command of a designated task group, designated as Task Group 50.9. This formidable unit comprised 4 destroyers, the heavy cruisers Minneapolis and New Orleans, and the cutting-edge battleships Iowa and New Jersey. Admiral Sprue personally spearheaded a naval engagement against the Japanese ships, eager to intercept and destroy the fleeing vessels. From the outset, the confrontation was markedly uneven, an unmistakable mismatch. The Japanese ships, already exhausted and battered from earlier clashes, stood little chance against the heavily armed and well-coordinated American task group. Their fatigue was evident, and their defenses were insufficient to withstand the might of the United States Navy's formidable fleet. Task Group 50.9, with its superior firepower and tactical advantage, swiftly overwhelmed the Japanese vessels. The battle was a testament to the relentless superiority of the American naval forces, which, through strategic planning and sheer force, ensured the destruction of the enemy's remaining ships and thwarted their escape attempts. Some members of the United States Pacific Fleet's seasoned staff regarded Admiral SPU's decision to engage directly in a surface naval confrontation with a mixture of skepticism and concern, perceiving it as an act of daring that bordered on recklessness. This was especially true given the fact that air power, with its ability to strike from a distance and deliver destruction with remarkable precision, could have achieved similar, if not greater, devastating effects without risking the lives of surface ships. The decision to go head-to-head in such a perilous manner seemed, to many, a gamble born of overconfidence rather than strategic necessity. During the tense engagement, a Japanese destroyer named Mazi made a bold yet ultimately ill-fated attempt to strike the American battleship New Jersey. With calculated precision, Mazi managed to launch a salvo of torpedoes aimed directly at its formidable opponent. The moment was fraught with danger, as the outcome could have swung either way, depending heavily on luck and the skill of the crews involved. Fortunately for the Americans, fortune favored them that day. The torpedoes, despite their deadly intent, veered off course and missed their mark. This narrow escape was a stroke of luck that spared Admiral Sprue from a potentially humiliating defeat, one that could have been attributed to his own hubris and overconfidence. The confrontation eventually reached a pivotal climax, culminating in a resounding victory for the United States. The battle unfolded with the American battleships Iowa and New Jersey gaining the rare and valuable opportunity to unleash their primary armament directly upon enemy vessels, a feat seldom possible in the chaos of naval combat. As the heat of the battle intensified, New Jersey's formidable 5-inch guns joined forces with accompanying U.S. cruisers, unleashing a barrage that effectively obliterated Mazi and the Japanese destroyer Shonan Maru. Meanwhile, the Iowa, with its heavy 16-inch guns, turned its formidable might toward a different target, Katori, sending the Japanese vessel to the depths of the ocean after a devastating barrage of shells struck true. In the aftermath of this intense barrage, only one Japanese vessel, the Noaki, managed to survive the onslaught with minimal damage, enduring the onslaught from Iowa's close-range fire and living to tell the tale. However, the Japanese forces did not respond passively to this defeat. Their retaliation was swift and calculated, coming under the cover of darkness. Between 9 o'clock in the evening on February 17th and just past midnight on February 18th, several groups of Japanese bombers launched relentless assaults against the American task group. These formations, each consisting of 1 to 3 aircraft, pressed their attacks with unyielding determination, seeking to breach the defenses that protected the American fleet. Among these attackers, a Nakajima B-5N2 Kate bomber succeeded in slipping past the vigilant night watch and the defenses of the American naval force. This aircraft managed to evade interception and launched a torpedo attack on Task Group 58, adding a further layer of danger and tension to an already intense conflict. The devastating impact of the attack on the USS Intrepid became painfully evident when a missile struck its starboard quarter, directly targeting its steering mechanism. This hit resulted in a severe malfunction, crippling the ship's ability to maneuver and control its course. Tragically, this incident led to the loss of 11 brave sailors, whose lives were cut short in a moment of chaos and destruction. The damage inflicted was so substantial that the USS Intrepid was forced to retreat from the front lines, sailing back to the shores of the United States to undergo necessary repairs and restoration. The ship remained out of active combat operations until the month of August in the year of 1944, when it finally rejoined the ongoing battles in the Pacific theater. The echoes of Operation Hailstone resonated profoundly across the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, marking a decisive turning point in the ongoing conflict between the Allied forces and Japan. This operation, which targeted the Japanese naval base at Truk Lagoon, once considered a formidable stronghold of Japanese naval power, ended in utter devastation. The extensive destruction of this key strategic location symbolized a dramatic resurgence of American naval dominance in the Pacific, signaling a shift in the balance of power. For many observers and military strategists, the attack on Truk Lagoon was viewed as a form of retribution, a tangible response to the unprovoked attack at Pearl Harbor 3 years earlier that had plunged the United States into the war. The sentiment of justice and retribution was further reinforced by the nickname that the Allies had bestowed upon Truk Lagoon, referring to it as the Japanese Pearl Harbor, a monument to Japanese naval resilience and the site of a significant strategic loss. During this monumental operation, the United States Navy's task forces launched an overwhelming assault, deploying over 550 combat aircraft across a span of just 2 days. The airstrikes were devastating and meticulously coordinated, resulting in the complete destruction of approximately 250 Japanese aircraft. The attack's destructive reach extended beyond aircraft, with the sinking or damaging of 2 light cruisers, 4 destroyers, 2 submarine tenders, 3 patrol planes, and 32 merchant vessels. The total toll in human lives was staggering, with approximately 4,500 Japanese personnel losing their lives amid the chaos and destruction. In stark contrast, the United States Navy suffered relatively minor casualties. Around 25 aircraft lost, 1 aircraft carrier and 1 battleship damaged, and a total of 40 sailors killed in action. The physical damage inflicted on Japanese naval assets was profound. They lost over 17,000 tons of stored fuel, a critical resource, and suffered the destruction of merchant ships, totaling over 200,000 tons. For the Allies, this victory was not only a strategic triumph, but also a significant moral boost, lifting spirits and reaffirming their resolve in the face of ongoing conflict. However, for the Japanese, morale plummeted dramatically, their forces besieged by despair and uncertainty as their naval capabilities diminished and their strategic position weakened. The crippling blow to Truk Lagoon effectively severed the Japanese naval supply and operational routes, marking a decisive and painful setback for Japan in the Pacific War. The strategic importance of the Japanese supply networks and the communication pathways that extended across their scattered forces in the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean played a crucial role in shaping the vulnerabilities of their military operations. These logistical arteries, once vital for maintaining their far-flung outposts and coordinating their naval and ground forces, became increasingly exposed and susceptible to disruption as the Allied forces advanced. While the immediate consequences of these vulnerabilities might not have been catastrophic at first glance, they nonetheless represented a significant shift in the balance of power, exposing the Japanese forces to new threats and complicating their efforts to sustain their military campaigns across such a broad theater of war. The lessons learned from Operation Hailstone, a pivotal naval and airstrike during the Pacific Campaign, proved to be invaluable for the United States military. This operation, which involved meticulously coordinated assaults involving airstrikes, naval bombardments, and sea blockades, provided critical insights into the effectiveness of synchronized attacks against well-entrenched enemy positions. The intelligence gleaned from these complex operations was carefully analyzed and subsequently integrated into the tactical doctrines of the U.S. forces. This newfound knowledge allowed for more refined and effective strategies in subsequent Pacific campaigns, enabling the Allies to optimize their combined arms approach and to develop a more sophisticated understanding of how to leverage air, sea, and land forces in concert to achieve their objectives. As the United States forces pressed forward across the Pacific, their focus shifted from one strategic target to another, adapting their tactics and priorities in response to the evolving battlefield landscape. One such target, the atoll of Eniwetok, once a site of intense military activity, gradually lost its significance in the face of more urgent objectives. Following the relentless onslaught of American operations, the importance of Eniwetok diminished, allowing U.S. forces to bypass it in favor of more critical targets that promised a greater strategic payoff. Consequently, the focus of the campaign moved onward, with the U.S. military pushing deeper into Japanese-held territories, steadily closing in on the ultimate objective of ending the war in the Pacific. Over time, the once active atoll of Eniwetok transformed from a military stronghold into a haunting underwater landscape, earning recognition as one of the world's most extensive ship graveyards. By the year of 1969, the lagoon had become a silent testament to the fierce battles that had taken place there. French explorer Jacques Cousteau, driven by a spirit of discovery and historical curiosity, ventured into the depths of the lagoon and uncovered the remains of numerous sunken Japanese vessels. Many of these ships lay in close proximity to one another, their hulls eerily preserved and seemingly frozen in time beneath the surface. These wrecks served as silent witnesses to the fierce combat and the sacrifices made by the crews who once manned them. Their skeletal remains and the wreckage bore silent testimony to the tragedy and the intensity of the conflict that had unfolded in these waters. The discovery of these submerged relics profoundly affected the Japanese government, prompting a movement to give the fallen sailors a respectful and dignified farewell. Recognizing the importance of honoring those who perished, efforts were initiated to ensure that the remains of the sailors were given proper burials, a gesture of compassion and respect that transcended the horrors of war. Today, the waters that once roared with the chaos of battle have transformed into a serene and sacred site, no longer serving as a battleground, but instead becoming a revered diving destination. The sunken ships and their surrounding ecosystems have gradually blossomed into vibrant marine habitats, illustrating the remarkable capacity of nature to reclaim and transform sites scarred by human conflict. These wrecks now host a diverse array of marine life, creating underwater landscapes that blend natural beauty with the echoes of history. The lagoon stands as a poignant symbol of the convergence between the destructive power of war and the restorative force of nature, embodying a powerful narrative of remembrance and renewal. For divers and history enthusiasts alike, the lagoon offers a unique and compelling experience. Drawn by its spectral allure, they embark on journeys beneath the surface to pay homage to the fallen and to uncover stories long hidden beneath the waves. With each descent, they connect with the past, exploring the silent remnants of a fierce conflict that shaped the course of history, while marveling at the thriving ecosystems that have since flourished in the aftermath. In this way, the once turbulent waters of Truk Lagoon have found a new purpose, transforming from a battlefield into a sanctuary of remembrance, reverence, and natural wonder.